Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel, The Girl Who Had Everything. My name is Maya Chen. I am 27 years old, and for most of my adult life, I was deeply unhappy without knowing why. That is the strangest kind of unhappy, not the kind that comes from a clear problem, a loss, a failure, a broken relationship, the kind that lives quietly underneath everything, like a low hum you stop noticing after a while, but that never actually stops. From the outside, my life looked fine. Good, even. I grew up in Sacramento, California, the daughter of two hardworking parents. My dad ran a small accounting firm. My mom taught elementary school. I went to UC Davis. I graduated with a degree in communications. I got a job at a marketing agency in San Francisco. I had a one-bedroom apartment in the Mission District with a window that let in good morning light. I had friends, I had a social life, I had a salary that covered my bills with a little left over. I had, by most reasonable measures, a good life. And yet, I was not happy. Not really. Not in the deep, settled, quiet way that I had always imagined happiness would feel. I was busy, I was sometimes excited, I was occasionally proud of myself, but underneath all of it, there was that hum, that low, persistent sense that something was missing, something was wrong, something was keeping me from the life I was supposed to be living. It took me a long time to understand what that something was. It wasn't one thing, it was six enemies. 6 habits of mine that I had been carrying so long they felt like personality, so natural they felt like truth, so deeply woven into the way I thought about myself in the world that I could not see them for what they were. This is the story of how I found them and how I learned, slowly and imperfectly, to let them go. Enemy number 1, jealousy. Jealousy, wanting what others have instead of building what you want. The first enemy had lived inside me for as long as I could remember. I just never called it by its real name. I called it awareness. I called it ambition. I called it knowing what I wanted. But its real name was jealousy. It lived in my phone. Every morning before I got out of bed, I scrolled. Instagram first, the highlight reels of people I knew, people I half knew, people I had never met but followed for reasons I couldn't fully explain. I watched my college friend Stephanie post photos from a trip to Japan. I watched a girl I had worked with 2 jobs ago announce her promotion to creative director. I watched a woman I had met once at a conference share pictures of her new apartment. High ceilings, exposed brick, natural light pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows. With each scroll, something tightened in my chest. Not hatred, I want to be clear about that. I didn't hate these people. I liked them. But I wanted what they had, and wanting what they had made me feel that what I had was not enough. That is the exact work jealousy does. It does not add anything to your life. It only subtracts. It takes the good things you have and makes them feel smaller by placing them next to someone else's good things. I spent hours every week looking at other people's lives and feeling worse about my own. I did not notice how much time this took. I did not notice the way it colored everything, how a perfectly good Tuesday could feel like a failure after 20 minutes of scrolling. I did not notice because jealousy is very good at pretending to be something else. It pretends to be inspiration. It pretends to be goals. It whispers, "I just know what I want." But inspiration makes you feel energized. Jealousy makes you feel hollow. And I was very, very hollow. Enemy number 2, complaining. Complaining, focusing on what is wrong instead of what can be changed. The second enemy was easier to see in other people, much harder to see in myself. I had a work friend named Dana. Dana complained about everything: her commute, her boss, the coffee machine on the 3rd floor that never worked properly, the weather, the way people chewed at the communal lunch table. Dana was a warm, funny, genuinely kind person who happened to spend about 40% of every conversation telling you what was wrong with something. I noticed this about Dana. I found it exhausting. I went home some evenings feeling strangely drained after spending time with her, even when nothing bad had happened. What I did not notice, for a very long time, that I did the same thing. Not as loudly as Dana, I was more subtle, but I complained constantly in a quieter way. I complained to my roommate about traffic. I complained to my mom about my boss. I complained to my friends about the city. Too expensive, too crowded, too much. I complained about the weather, about the lines at my favorite coffee shop, about a coworker who sent too many reply-all emails. Small things, ordinary things, the texture of daily irritation that most people narrate without thinking. But here is what I learned about complaining. Every complaint is a vote. Every time you say this is wrong, this is bad, this is not enough, you are training your mind to look for what is wrong and bad and not enough. And your mind, being obedient and efficient, gets better at exactly what you practice. I had been practicing complaint for years. I had become very, very good at it, and my mind had become a machine for finding problems in my job, in my city, in my relationships, in myself. No wonder I was unhappy. I had trained myself to be. Enemy number 3, excuses. Excuses, reasons you give yourself for not starting the life you actually want. The third enemy was the most comfortable one, because excuses feel like wisdom, they feel like self-awareness, they feel like being realistic about the world. I had a dream that I had been carrying since college. I wanted to write. Not marketing copy, real writing, personal essays, stories, the kind of writing that says something true about being a person in the world. I had notebooks full of half-started pieces. I had a folder on my laptop called Writing that I opened once every few months, read through a few paragraphs, and closed again without adding anything new. When people asked me why I wasn't writing more, I had answers ready. I don't have time. I watch 3 hours of television most evenings. I'm too tired after work. I was tired, but I was also scrolling Instagram for an hour before bed. I need the right conditions, a better desk, a quieter apartment, a longer stretch of uninterrupted time. The right conditions were never coming. I'm not ready yet. I need to read more, learn more, grow more before I can really start. I had been saying this for 4 years. Every one of these excuses felt true when I said it. Every one protected me from something, from trying, from failing, from finding out that maybe I wasn't as good as I hoped. That is the real function of an excuse. It is not laziness, it is protection. Excuses are armor, and armor, while it keeps you safe, also keeps you still. You cannot move freely in full armor. You cannot build anything, create anything, become anything while wearing it. I had been wearing mine for years, and I had grown so used to the weight of it that I had forgotten it was there. Enemy number 4, living in the past. Living in the past, letting old pain, old mistakes, or old versions of yourself run your present. The fourth enemy was quieter than the others. It didn't announce itself. It worked in the background, like software running silently while you try to use the screen in front of you. When I was 22, I was in a relationship with a man named Daniel. We were together for 2 years. I loved him in the way you love someone when you are young and certain and haven't learned yet that certainty doesn't guarantee anything. He left, not dramatically, just quietly, the way some people leave, with the slow withdrawal of attention and warmth, until one day you look around and they are simply gone. I told myself I was over it. I said this convincingly. I believed it mostly. But Daniel lived in me in ways I didn't recognize. He lived in the way I chose partners after him, cautiously with one hand always on the door. He lived in the way I held back in relationships, never quite giving the full version of myself, because the full version of myself had been given once and had not been enough to make someone stay. He was not the only past thing I carried. I carried the memory of a job I had been fired from at 24, unfairly, I believed, but still. I carried a friendship that had ended badly in college, a falling out with a roommate that had never been fully resolved. I carried the specific embarrassment of a presentation I had given at work that had gone wrong in front of 30 people. None of these things were present anymore. They were over, done, filed away in the past where they belonged. Except they weren't filed away. They were right here, running in the background, shaping every choice I made today based on pain I had felt years ago. The past is a place you can visit. It becomes a problem when you live there. Part 6. Enemy number 5. Fear, letting the possibility of failure stop you from attempting the life you want. Fear and excuses are cousins. They live in the same house, but they are not the same thing. Excuses are the stories you tell. Fear is the feeling underneath the stories. I was afraid of many things. Some of them were specific and nameable. I was afraid of being rejected by editors if I submitted my writing, by people if I showed them who I really was, by life if I asked for too much. I was afraid of failure in the public, visible, undeniable way, the kind you cannot explain away, the kind other people see. But underneath the specific fears was a larger, older, harder to name one, the fear that I was not enough, that if I tried, really tried, with my full self and my real dreams and no armor, I would discover that I was smaller than I hoped, that the gap between who I was and who I wanted to be was not closable, that I was fundamentally a person to whom good things happened to other people. This fear shaped everything. It kept my writing in a folder on my laptop. It kept me in relationships that were comfortable but not right. It kept me at a job that paid well but made me feel nothing. It kept me safe in all the ways that safety, when taken too far, becomes its own kind of prison. The painful irony of fear is this: it promises to protect you from pain, but the life it keeps you in, the small, safe, unlived life, is its own kind of pain, a slower pain, a quieter pain, the pain of looking at your life and knowing it is less than it could be, and knowing that you are the one keeping it that way. Fear does not keep you from pain, it just changes its shape. Part 7. Enemy number 6. Negative people. Those who drain your energy, shrink your dreams, and normalize unhappiness. The sixth enemy was the hardest to identify because the people I'm talking about were not bad people. They were not cruel or abusive or deliberately harmful. They were people I liked, people I had known for years, people who loved me in their way, but they were heavy. There was my friend Kelsey, who had been unhappy in her job for 3 years and talked about it constantly, but refused every suggestion for change, shot down every idea, and seemed more comfortable in her misery than she would have been in the discomfort of doing something different. There was my cousin Derek, who responded to any good news in my life with a gentle but consistent dose of doubt. That sounds good, but have you thought about what happens if it doesn't work out? Are you sure that's a good idea? I just don't want you to get hurt. Always concerned, always framed as love, but always pulling downward. There was a group of friends I had from college who got together every few weeks to eat and drink and complain about their jobs, their relationships, the state of the world, the difficulty of being the age we were in the city we were in. The conversations were warm and familiar and always left me feeling strangely heavier than before. We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. I had heard this idea before and dismissed it as oversimplified, but I was beginning to understand it in a new way, not as a judgment of the people around me, but as an honest accounting of what different kinds of company do to your mind and your energy and your sense of what is possible. Some people, when you leave them, leave you feeling lighter. Some people, when you leave them, leave you feeling heavier. Both kinds exist, and you get to choose which ones you spend your limited hours with. Part 8. The night everything broke. The night I finally understood all of this happened on a Thursday in October. I was 26. I had just come home from dinner with Kelsey and Derek and the college friends, one of those warm, comfortable, complaining evenings. We had talked about how hard things were, how expensive everything was, how difficult our jobs were, how other people seemed to have it easier. We had laughed a lot. We had eaten good food. By any surface measure, it was a pleasant evening. I came home, sat on my couch, and opened Instagram. I scrolled for 40 minutes. Stephanie's new travel photos, a former co-worker's job announcement, an influencer I followed whose entire life appeared to be one perfect moment after another. I put my phone down, I looked at the ceiling, and I thought, I am 26 years old, I have a good life, and I am deeply, persistently, unexplainably unhappy. Why? Not the vague version of that question, the real one, the one that required a real answer. I got up, I went to my desk, I opened my laptop, not Instagram, not Netflix, not the work emails I had been avoiding, a blank document. I typed at the top, "Why am I not happy?" And I sat there and answered it, honestly, completely, without performing and without protecting myself from what I found. I wrote for 2 hours. When I finished, I had 6 things on the page, 6 patterns, 6 enemies, though I didn't call them that yet. I stared at the list for a long time. Then I did something I had not done in years. I cried. Not sad crying, the other kind, the kind that comes when you finally see something clearly that you have been avoiding for a long time. Part 9. The Old Woman on the Bench. The next morning, I went to Dolores Park, a wide, grassy park with a view of the San Francisco skyline. I went there sometimes when I needed to think. I brought coffee and sat on a bench near the top of the hill. An older woman was sitting on the same bench. She was perhaps 70 years old, with short silver hair and a wool coat and a small dog asleep at her feet. She was reading a paperback and did not look up when I sat down. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then she closed her book and looked out at the city. She said, "Beautiful morning," not to me specifically, just to the air. I said, "It is." We talked for a little while, lightly, like strangers talk in parks. Her name was Eleanor. She had lived in San Francisco for 40 years. She was a retired teacher. I don't know why I said what I said next. Maybe because she was a stranger, maybe because the morning was clear and I had been honest with myself the night before, and honesty, once started, has a way of continuing. "Can I ask you something? You seem like someone who figured something out." Eleanor looked at me with calm, amused eyes. "What would you like to know?" "How do you—" I paused. "How do you get out of your own way? How do you stop the things inside you that keep you from being happy?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You have to name them first. You can't fight what you haven't named. Once you can see them clearly, really see them, they lose about half their power. The other half you lose by acting differently, one day at a time." She picked up her book again. Her dog shifted in its sleep. I sat there for a long time after she went back to reading, thinking about the list on my laptop, about naming, about half the power gone just from seeing clearly. Part 10. Letting Go of Jealousy. I went home from the park and started with the first enemy. I deleted Instagram from my phone. Not permanently. I told myself I would put it back after 30 days if I wanted to, but for 30 days, it was gone. The first 3 days were strange. I kept reaching for my phone and finding nothing to scroll. I felt a specific kind of restlessness, like a habit looking for its home. I filled the time with other things: a walk, a book, cooking a real meal instead of ordering delivery. By the end of the first week, something had shifted, not dramatically, but noticeably. Tuesday felt like Tuesday, not like a comparison to someone else's Tuesday, not like evidence that my life was less than someone else's, just Tuesday, mine. I began to practice something that felt almost embarrassingly simple. When I noticed jealousy rising, when I heard about someone's success, saw someone's new apartment, learned about a promotion I hadn't gotten, I tried to redirect it, not to suppress it, which doesn't work, but to redirect it into a question. What does this tell me about what I actually want? Because jealousy, for all its damage, contains information. It points at things you want. The problem is not the wanting. The problem is looking at someone else having the thing instead of turning toward building it yourself. When I saw Stephanie's travel photos, I no longer thought, why does she get to do that? I thought, I want to travel more. What would that actually require? The energy shifted from outward and resentful to inward and constructive. It did not happen overnight, but it happened. Part 11. Replacing complaints with gratitude. The second enemy was harder to fight than the first because complaining is social. It is woven into conversation. It is how people bond, how they signal shared experience, how they feel less alone in difficulty. I could not simply stop complaining. That is both unrealistic and honestly not entirely healthy. Sometimes things are genuinely wrong and need to be named. The goal was not silence. The goal was ratio. The goal was to stop letting complaint be the default setting of my mind. I started a gratitude practice, not the performative kind, not posting 5 things I was grateful for on social media every morning, the private kind. Every night before bed, I wrote 3 things that had been genuinely good about the day. Not big things. Small things were fine. The morning coffee that was exactly right. A conversation that made me laugh. The specific quality of afternoon light through my window at 4 o'clock. It felt silly at first, forced, like putting a smiley face sticker over a crack in the wall. But something interesting happened after about 3 weeks. I started noticing good things during the day, not just at night when I wrote them down. I started catching them as they happened: the good coffee, the good light, the interesting conversation. My mind, which had been trained to find problems, was slowly being retrained to find something else. I also made a rule for myself about complaining. If I was going to say something was wrong, I had to also say one thing I could do about it. Not always, not perfectly, but as a practice. Complaint plus action, or complaint plus acceptance, but not complaint alone. Complaint as a final destination with nowhere to go. Part 12, Facing Fear and Dropping Excuses. Enemies 3 and 5, excuses and fear, I decided to fight together because they came from the same place. I opened the folder on my laptop called Writing. I read through what was there. It was better than I remembered. Not perfect, rough in places, unfinished in others, but real, alive, the kind of writing that had something to say. I made a decision. I would write for 30 minutes every morning before work. Not when I felt ready, not when conditions were perfect, now, with the imperfect desk and the noisy apartment and the tired mind. 30 minutes every day. No excuses accepted. The first week was painful. The writing was bad. I knew it was bad while I was writing it, and I wrote it anyway because the alternative, the folder sitting closed on my laptop for another 4 years, was worse. By the third week, something loosened. The writing got easier. Not good, easier. The difference between lifting a weight that is heavy and lifting a weight that is familiar. Still work, but work you know how to do. 3 months in, I finished an essay, a real one, complete, shaped, with a beginning and a middle and an ending that earned its place. I read it and thought, this is something. I submitted it to an online literary magazine. They rejected it. I submitted it to another. They rejected it too. I submitted it to a third. They published it. It was a small magazine, probably 4,000 readers, but 4,000 people read something I had written and found it worth their time. That was not nothing. That was everything. That was proof that the fear had been lying to me, that trying and failing a few times and then succeeding was available to me if I was willing to try. Part 13, Making Peace with the Past. The fourth enemy, the past, required a different approach. You cannot outrun the past. You cannot delete it. You cannot argue it into irrelevance. The only thing that works, I found, is something that sounds simpler than it is. You have to grieve it, really grieve it, not perform moving on, but actually feel the loss of what happened and what didn't happen, and then consciously, deliberately choose to stop letting it vote on your present. I wrote Daniel a letter, not to send, just to write. I said everything I had never said, not just the anger, but the sadness underneath the anger and the fear underneath the sadness. I wrote about the job I had been fired from and what it had done to my confidence. I wrote about the friendship that had ended and the specific, unresolved grief of losing someone who was still alive. Then I did something that felt almost ceremonial. I took the pages outside. I sat on my apartment steps in the evening air, and I read them one more time, slowly, as a goodbye. I did not burn them. I'm not a dramatic person, and my apartment building has a no open flame policy. I put them in the recycling bin, which is perhaps less poetic, but equally final. And then I said out loud to nobody in particular, that was then, this is now. I am not the person those things happened to anymore. I am the person who got through them. It was not a one-time fix. The past has a way of returning, but I had given it a farewell, and every time it returned after that, I had something to say back to it. I already said goodbye to you. You don't live here anymore. Part 14, Choosing Better People. The sixth enemy, negative people, required the most delicate work because you cannot simply remove people from your life without care. Relationships are not apps you delete. People have history and love and complexity. And the people I'm talking about were not bad people. They were heavy people. There's a difference. I did not end my friendships with Kelsey or Derek or the college group, but I changed how I engaged with them. With Kelsey, I stopped offering solutions to problems she didn't want solved. I listened, I was warm, but when the conversation became a loop, the same complaint circling back to the same place, I gently redirected. That sounds really hard. What do you think you're going to do about it? Not to be dismissive, but because I had learned that questions move conversations forward and complaints keep them in place. With Derek, I stopped sharing my dreams before they were strong enough to survive his doubt. I shared results instead, not plans, results. He could not diminish what had already happened. And I started spending more time with different people, people who were building things, people who talked about ideas and possibilities as much as problems, people who left me feeling lighter. I joined a writing group, 8 people who met every 2 weeks to share work and give honest, kind feedback. These people became some of the most important relationships in my life, not because they were perfect, but because being around them made me want to be better, made building feel possible, made the future feel like something I was moving toward rather than something that was happening to other people. Your environment shapes you. The people in it shape you. Choosing them carefully is not selfishness, it is self-preservation. Part 15. The Seventh Friend. I am 27 years old now, 1 year after the Thursday night when I sat at my desk and made a list of everything that was keeping me unhappy. My life looks similar from the outside. Same city, same job, though I'm applying for a new one, something that excites me more. Same apartment, same window with the good morning light. Same friends, mostly, though the time I spend with different people has quietly shifted. But from the inside, things are different, fundamentally, genuinely different. I write every morning. I have published 3 essays now, one in a magazine I deeply respect, which still feels slightly unreal. I have stopped scrolling Instagram first thing in the morning and started that time with 10 minutes of quiet instead. I have a gratitude practice that is no longer forced. It has become something I look forward to, a nightly inventory of small good things that reminds me the day was not empty. I am not perfectly happy. I want to say that clearly because stories about personal growth can make it sound like a switch that gets flipped. There are still hard days, still moments of jealousy, still complaints, still fear, still the old past knocking at the door of the present. The 6 enemies do not disappear. You just get better at seeing them coming. And there is one more thing, a 7th friend, though I did not put it on the original list because I did not understand it yet at the time I made that list. The 7th friend is self-compassion, the willingness to look at yourself, at your jealousy and your complaints and your excuses and your old wounds and your imperfect social choices and say, I see all of that and I am still on my own side. Because here is what I have learned about the 6 enemies of happiness. They are not evidence that you are broken. They are evidence that you are human. Every person alive has some version of these 6 things living inside them. The difference between people who are mostly happy and people who are mostly not is not the absence of these enemies, it's the willingness to look at them honestly and work day by day to give them less power. I went back to Dolores Park last week. Same bench, different morning. Eleanor was not there. I have not seen her since that October day, and perhaps I never will again. But I thought about what she said. Name them, see them clearly, lose half the power, lose the other half by acting differently one day at a time. She was right. She was exactly right. And I am for the first time in a long time, genuinely, quietly, happily, okay.